of Councilman Mark Squilla. Mark, where are you? I just saw you walk in. Mark Squilla over here. By the way, one of my first stops after we got a permit to have a 50th on July the 4th was Mark Squilla's office, because this is in his district. And Mark has been an absolute champion and a joy to work with. And Mark, thank you so much. And then also the LGBT liaison to the mayor, Nellie Fitzgerald. And by the way, Mazel Tov on your wedding. Now, there are any number of amazing people in this room. But I'm going to, and hopefully won't offend anybody by virtue of leaving somebody out, but I want to recognize the very first American soldier injured in the Iraq War. He lost his leg. He's a third-generation Marine, and he's an out gay man, Eric Alba. You know, we achieve our civil rights in terms of 3 different ways. 1, through legislation; 2, through the law; and 3, through the court of popular opinion. And in terms of changing hearts and minds, we have a really iconic figure in the room, and I would be totally remiss if I didn't recognize Bishop Gene Robinson. Also in this room are the very first couple in Pennsylvania to get a marriage license and to get married, Dee Spagnola and Sasha Ballin in the back of the room. And pragmatically, to get to the United States Supreme Court in terms of a social issue, there's got to be at least 2/3 of the states that come on board. And so by virtue of what Sasha and Dee did and others did in terms of stepping forward, they enabled the next person who I'm going to introduce and asked you to welcome him. It is a great honor to have in the room the marriage Supreme Court plaintiff, James Obergefell. We are awarding today the 20th Annual International Role Model Award to 2 people, one who is a member of our community and one who is a straight ally. And as some people have heard me say, no civil rights movement goes anywhere without allies. And so I'd like to call upon the Lieutenant Governor of the state. He's our 33rd Lieutenant Governor. He served 4 terms in the Senate. He's a captain in the Pennsylvania Army National Guard, a graduate of LaSalle and Villanova Law School. His grandfather was an Irish immigrant and became, this is the American story, a United States congressman. Isn't that amazing? His father, a lawyer and very respected ward leader from the Northeast. His mom is a municipal court judge. He's got quite a family lineage. We're very honored to have Lieutenant Governor Mike Stack to present the International Role Model Award to Judy Shepard.
Well, I tell you, I'm delighted to be with everybody today, and what a wonderful day. The weather has not been what we would hope, but we are in a monumentally important location. We have so many things going on in the greatest city in America, and you're allowed to applaud the greatest city in America. Because this is the city where it all happens. This is the city where we stand up for justice and equality. And I can't think of a better place to be than with you today. So thank you so much, Malcolm. Thank you for everything that Equality Forum has done and continues to do. And thank you for having me with you today. I'm honored. You know, what it makes this day really even more special is the fact that we just had that momentous court decision. And the path to that decision provides a lesson to all of us that, of course, you know, human rights are not always easily won, and they're not won quickly. And they often require long and difficult fights. Sometimes those fights take place in the courts, sometimes in legislative bodies, and sometimes in the streets. And unfortunately, sometimes they are settled with blood. And whether we're talking about ending slavery or extending the right to vote to women, or allowing children to attend certain schools, or allowing workers to organize, those fights were lengthy and difficult. The important thing is that we continue to strive. And that's no matter how distant justice may seem. So to all of us who've carried on the fight for marriage equality, I congratulate you, not just on your victory, but also for having the courage and the hope to wage that battle as long as you did. And I'm glad I can share this moment with you today. Of course, there are still struggles against discrimination ahead in areas such as housing and employment. So we'll press on, and we'll win on those issues as well, no matter how long it takes. Before October 1998, the American people gave very little thought to the anti-LGBT hate crimes. A handful of states had passed sentence enhancements and other measures against bias crimes against LGBT people. A few members of Congress and a small group of national LGBT advocates had called for a federal law to cover the gap in protection, but to no avail. All that changed after the shocking and tragic murder of Matthew Shepard in Laramie, Wyoming. And Matthew's murder attracted the attention of millions through the media, spontaneous candlelight vigils, all over the country, protest marches, and renewed interest from political leaders from the White House down to the local level. But there was much work to be done yet. Amid their grief, Matthew's parents, Judy and Dennis Shepard, became the leading examples of the power of the LGBT community allies to focus attention on the problem of hatred and violence and to offer hope and a path forward. Through their tireless advocacy, the Shepards helped to finally push through the Matthew Shepard and James Byrd Jr. Hate Crimes Prevention Act, nearly 11 years to the day after Matthew's death. Using her voice as a rallying cry for parents, neighbors, educators, friends, and colleagues of LGBT people, Judy Shepard recorded public service announcements, testified to lawmakers, sat for countless media interviews, and visited more than 800 campuses and public and private schools, workplaces, places of worship, and community organizations to spread the message of replacing hate with understanding, compassion, and acceptance. And as the years have passed, her influence has grown more and more. She and Dennis have now helped the Department of Justice to provide training to local law enforcement agencies in a dozen regions nationwide and lent their support and encouragement to international efforts to prevent these crimes worldwide. As special citizen envoys for the State Department, or in the partnership with other organizations, one or both of the Shepards have now visited 19 countries to meet with LGBT people, their allies, government officials, and civil society organizations to fan the embers of citizen action against bias and discrimination in all its forms. Judy Shepard has often said she wants nothing more than for her work to no longer be necessary, and envisions a world free of hatred. The greatest tribute we could give her today would be our individual commitments in whatever capacity or influence we hold within our spheres of influence to bring about that change. Is everybody committed to bring about that change?
Yes.
With that, It is my honor to present on behalf of Equality Forum and the National LGBT's 50th anniversary celebration, the 20th Annual International Role Model Award to Judy Shepard, who is accompanied by her great husband, Dennis Shepard. God bless you.
Yes, thank you. Dennis and I are very grateful for this recognition and also the admonition to carry on the fight. I think as an ally, our most important message to all of you is please talk to us, engage us, educate us, and be patient. I know lots of allies who would be in this fight if they weren't sort of afraid. They might use the wrong words, say the wrong thing, or ask a stupid question. So please, please, talk to us, ask us, educate us. We're waiting to be asked to help. So please, please do that. Thank you to Malcolm. Thank you to all of you for your recognition, your kindness, your friendship, and your support. Thanks very much.
I now have the pleasure of calling on a long-standing ally of this community. He was a state representative for 10 years. He's now been a state senator for the last 16 years. Comes from a district in West Philadelphia where when he stood up for us, he wasn't gaining any votes. He did it because it was the right thing to do, because that's what he has always stood for. He is someone who has supported William Way Community Center. We would not have a John Anderson Senior Center but for the support that we got from, in part, three sources, city, state, and federal. And Senator Williams was hugely important in terms of us getting that state to support. And he introduced a bill currently, about a year or so ago, in regards to reparative therapy. Really, one of the next things that we need to take on, the hocus pocus, that goes back, by the way. Remember, one of the things that Frank and Barbara did was he took on the American Psychiatric Association when we were classified as being mentally ill. They won, but you know what? For every cure, for every illness, there's a cure. And that cottage industry didn't want to go away. And what we're seeing is finally them being taken on in terms of now 3 states that have made it illegal for them to practice their voodoo. And we're very grateful to Senator Williams in terms of, with Brian Sims, in both the House and the Senate, championing that cause. So it is an honor to call on Senator Williams to present.
I cannot tell you how moved I am to be here, how excited I am to be here. Certainly I thank the members of the Equality Forum and my friend Malcolm for allowing me to say a few brief words and then introduce to you a legend who probably needs no introduction. But this moment is special for me because I was born into a family, for all the things that people talk about, I was born into a family that came from humble beginnings, and they were part of a civil rights movement amongst African Americans. And I can only imagine, for anyone who stands in this room, after the Supreme Court made its decision and all the fanfare, everybody's a hero and all things are right and wonderful and everybody wants to be a part of a winner. But before you got there, before we got there, my family, my mom and my dad had to move several times. My father was a lawyer from Penn. He got fired from his job. His children at 7 years old were introduced to getting fired simply because you stood up for an issue of civil momentum, not just civil rights, civil momentum across this country. And I can tell you, as a person who stands in this room with you today, there's nothing better than the Supreme Court of the United States to say, not just friends, it's nice to have friends and family and politicians and resolutions, but for the Supreme Court of the United States to say, this Constitution stands for all Americans, and you in this room and I in this room are part of that American promise. There's nothing better. When Malcolm called me and asked me whether I wanted to come, I wanted to tell you that I couldn't run fast enough to get here, just so you know. But I'll tell you the other part. I'm an African American who went through the civil rights movement, and in the middle of those votes that we were taking over the last 10 years, African Americans were not partners initially. African Americans in many of these churches that house the civil rights movement, many of the spiritual leaders were reluctant to understand the consequence of people who were part of the LGBT community. Frankly, some actually would sit there in sermons and castigate people of a different sexual orientation. It gave me difficult and very challenging pause to sit in a pew for somebody who was guiding me about the rules of life and what I should do to be a good human being, and then castigating another human being, and I didn't quite understand why. I could not understand why I had to argue with my friends about people are born with a perspective on their sexual orientation, and it's very complex. Very complex. It's not something that just happens, and so the therapy bill was just a natural evolution from that. So I'm telling you how proud I am of truly having an alliance in a civil rights movement that frankly will liberate this entire nation. What happened this year, what happened 20 or some odd years ago, has opened up this country in ways that we can't imagine. And so understand, when immigrants now land, there's a different perspective. When those words that Donald Trump said, that's why he got fired. And unfortunately, when a young minister, a state senator, was gunned down in South Carolina, the nation stopped and paused, not just in horror, but in shock that we could still act that way as Americans. And so for me, it is a moment of love that we're embracing here today. This person that I bring for the presentation on behalf of the Equality Forum and the International Role Model Award is, I read her resume 5 times because I'm in awe. I'm in awe. This process, any story that involves the Nazis and fighting against the Nazis is a great story. Just want you to know that part. But to be as extraordinary as she is, I'll just get to the business of it. Some of you know the story. I'll just repeat it. Edie Windsor came from Philadelphia. Even though she's lived in New York probably far too long and is a Giants fan by now. First generation American. To be a first generation American, life is economically difficult. No, it means you're poor and you're moving from poverty. Her father lost his ice cream store and the family home during the Great Depression. Stories I could share with you about my grandparents. Similar situation. At a time when relatively few women attended college, relatively few women attended college, she graduated with a degree from the University of Temple. Edie received a master's degree in mathematics from New York University, NYU. In New York, she met Thea Spire, a dashing young woman, whose family moved to America to escape the Nazis. They started dating in 1965. Could you imagine in 1965 what that had to feel like? And I don't care where you were in this country. 2 years later, Thea and Edie were with an engagement. Thea presented Edie with an engagement brooch. Thea and Edie were inseparable. At IBM. Now, I gotta stop on these different moments because Like when you're going through life, people will say, you know, you're an African American, and they'll say things like, "You speak so well."
Wow.
And I can't dunk a basketball either. So you're dating in 1965. You're openly gay, but you're smart as hell. And people want to put you in a box, and this woman, like, there's no box for me. There's no box you can put me in. Who I love is who I love, but how I work is manifested across this country. And by the way, it's not only manifested across this country. I work for the giant IBM. And not only do I work for IBM, I have a PhD. And I'm a leader at IBM. At IBM, Edie went on to become an early leader in mainframe computers. That means those gigantic things that, you know, nobody can imagine. I mean, I carry this thing in my pocket every day, and I'm like, man, if my kids only understood what a mainframe really used to be. Leader in mainframe. She won a highly competitive IBM PhD scholarship. That meant that she had to pay for her education through a scholarship. Over her career, Edie was one of IBM's most respected hardware and software specialists. That meant that she wasn't known for who she loved. She was known for her professional stripes. How do you carry that in 1965 as a woman? And by the way, guys, I mean, if you're gay or straight, a guy always has it easier. A woman, I don't care. To be gay in 1965, I mean, corporate America, I would have been the original guy with the Uzi in the office. I'm sorry, Edie has a long-standing involvement with LGBT organizations and issues including New York LGBT Community Center, New York Gay Games, senior and homeless youth, among other communal services. In 2007, Edie and Thea traveled to Canada to be legally married. As Thea's health significantly deteriorated, Edie was constantly by her side. When Thea passed away in 2009, she left her estate to Edie. Since their marriage was not recognized by the federal government under the so-called Defense of Marriage Act, Edie was required to pay over $350,000 in federal and estate taxes. $350,000 to be penalized simply because you are in love with someone else of the same sexual orientation. For Edie, the paramount issue was the recognition of her 44 years with Thea, their marriage, and the LGBT community. I want you to understand, for me, it would be the $350,000. I would get on to the other parts of feeling. A mere 2 years and a week ago, the Supreme Court constitutionally gutted the Defense of Marriage Act in Windsor versus U.S. Windsor versus U.S. became the legal underpinning by which the state and federal courts across this country, including here in Pennsylvania, declared that same-sex marriage was constitutionally mandated. I'd like to present to you this year's award winner, Edie Windsor.
My speech is a little longer than some that I've been hearing, but I needed to say it. I'm Edie Windsor, but I'm thrilled to be here with all of you in this city of Philadelphia, the birthplace of freedom and of myself. And I feel so honored by this humongous award. I got a bachelor's degree here at Temple University, my master's degree at NYU, and my honorary doctorate at Johns Hopkins University. I'm also thrilled to be here, okay, to meet, but not only, and I haven't yet and must, okay, to be on the same bill as Judy Shepard. She is amazing. I now indulge my personal passion for this being what for me were the highlights of the 50 years of our civil rights progress. We know that the lesbian gay civil rights movement was galvanized when organized by Barbara Liddings and Frank Kameny, who organized the demonstrations for equality at Independence Hall each 4th of July from 1965 to 1969. They began at the same time that I started to date me at. A period when I was just beginning to come out. Then 1960 came and Stonewall. Before that first night of rioting, I was an ignoramus who said, I don't see why I have to be identified with these queens. But those queens, gays and trans, overturned the police car and changed my life. I saw them for who they are, as gutsy human beings fighting for our dignity, and I loved what I saw. For me, it was the beginning of my sense of community. In 1970, those protests became gay pride marches and pride months all over the country. At that time, gay men and lesbians primarily lived and socialized in two different worlds. And then in the early 80s, we had the AIDS crisis. And the lesbians poured in to help. Okay, escort to doctors and hospitals, household chores, shopping, carried out the garbage, nursing cares. Nothing was too much and nothing was enough. And in the midst of illness and heartache and the loss of most of the generation, the wall between the sexes came down, and we saw each other and loved what we saw. Still more of us came out, and it was like a roller coaster. Our sense of community increased still more. I need to insert the name Larry Kramer, who during that whole tragic period fought the government, fought the medical world for attention, for medications, and fought his peers to stop having unsafe sex until we could learn what was causing this scourge. He organized ACT UP and Silence is Dead, was arrested for protesting in the street. This really classy author, writer, okay, was down in the street, fighting for us, okay. Nor has he given up his mission today, invigorating all of us to fight for cure. Now, marriage equality I'll talk about, mostly my experience and my perception of its effect on mine and our lives. In 1965, I think some of you just heard it, he and I began to date, and in 1967 we became engaged to be married. But it was symbolical. We never expected to be able to marry and made myriad adjustments to our financial and life planning to protect each other. I still have our canceled checks for 50% each to pay for the apartment in which I still live. And I even have the check registers to prove one hadn't gifted the other to write a check. We assumed, probably correctly in those days, that when one of us died first, the survivor might have to prove that 50% or lose it. In 1996, President Clinton signed a new law formally named the Defense of Marriage Act, DOMA, which said the federal government would recognize no marriage other than those between a man and a woman. Our own attitudes and hopes changed when Mary Bonato sued and won marriage for same-sex couples in Massachusetts. She really established the possibility of legal marriage for me and really for most of us. So later, when it was confirmed in a state court that New York State recognized all legal marriages, we were married in Canada. It's a neat story, but it's too long for now. When Thea died, I had to pay an enormous estate tax, both to the federal government and to New York State. I immediately became a major ambassador for ESPA, Empire State Pride Agenda, and began working with Marriage Equality New York. Marching, appearing as witness to marriage attempts in city clerks' offices, handing out pamphlets, everything. Friends in the legal placement business offered to write to some lawyers who might be interested in my case. And Robbie Kaplan, a litigation partner in Paul Lifestyle, appeared in my apartment the next day. It took us 10 minutes to decide we were a good match. I was the plaintiff, and Robbie was the lead lawyer. James Essex, is he here today?
No, what's your role?
You'll see them yet. I'm sorry. Okay, director of ACLU LGBT and AIDS Project, a superb lawyer, joined us immediately. And later, when we were accepted by the Supreme Court, we were joined by Pam Carlin, then co-director of the Supreme Court Clinic at Stanford University, now with the Justice Department. Now my case. Edie Windsor versus United States of America. Won in the district court, and partway through our President and Justice Department announced that they agreed that DOMA was unconstitutional and that they would no longer defend it. The Republican majority in the 5-person Judicial Committee of the House of Representatives took us on. We won in the appeals court with a glorious decision. The name of the case changed. I don't know if any of you realize, changed from Edie Windsor versus the United States to the United States of America versus Edie Windsor. As you know, we all won again. Both sides won. Yes, I got my money back. More important, DOMA was declared unconstitutional. Number of LGBT couples married, 0 states in 2002, 15 states, 5 states, and I have a question mark, I don't remember what it was, 9 states when Windsor was first heard at the Supreme Court, 13 states when Windsor was decided June 26, 2013, 18 states at the end of 2013, 35 states after the Ninth Circuit Appeals Court struck down bans against LGBT marrying in October 2014. In the course of our very public wins through the courts, we have affected the thinking and feeling of large numbers of our straight countrymen and women who have come to see us as human beings who live and love as they do and who bring up children who play with and go to school with their children. The polls, always negative about our marrying before the cases, show 56 to 60% approval in the country now. We ourselves have come out in ever-increasing numbers, and we see each other and love what we see. So what is still missing? My win applied to married couples, but it wasn't clear what happened if you got married in a state different from your own state, especially if your state didn't allow you to marry there and did not recognize your out-of-state marriage. The day after my decision, President Obama announced that federal recognition, with all its benefits and responsibilities, applies to everyone who is legally married in their own state or not. But no state recognition still. What's that mean? It's the simplest example. What happened if one of you got sick in your own state and was hospitalized and only immediate family could be admitted? Dozens more complications. Jim will tell you some of them later. Some much more serious if the state doesn't recognize your marriage. So, Obergefell et al. Versus Hodges, Director of Ohio Department of Health et al. Argued April 28, 2015. Jim, where are you? I said, okay, I see you. And we will hear from him a lot later in the day. Decided June 2015, decided on the second anniversary of the Windsor decision, which was June 26, 2013. 14 couples and 2 men whose same-sex partners are deceased filed suits in their federal district courts. Each district court was ruled in favor, but the 6th Circuit consolidated their cases and reversed. So they went to the Supreme Court. And they won for all of us. They won. Jim, are you still a feature speaker later?
Yes.
Today?
Yes. Yes.
You're in all this. It's a wonderful story. The 14th Amendment requires a state to license a marriage. The results, okay? Jim's results. The 14th Amendment requires a state to license a marriage between 2 people of the same sex and to recognize a marriage between 2 people of same sex when their marriage was lawfully licensed and performed out of state. A special plea for me. It is marriage with no same-sex modifier. We must teach the newspapers and the public and ourselves. It is not same-sex marriage, it is marriage. Yeah. It's like a nightmare for me, the things that I can imagine. I beg everybody, don't just not say it yourself, Okay, defend the word marriage and disparage the use of that adjective. Thank you, Jim Oberfeld, for lending your name and your presence and your love story, heartwarming and heartbreaking at the same time, to this total win for all LGBT couples. I also want to thank HRC, who honchoed, and the 207,551 Americans who signed the People's Brief, and those of you who signed too late for the printer. Okay, this went to Jim's court. This is the content of the thing. This is 1 volume of 9, okay, with more than 500,000 names. Okay, double spaced. They're sitting in my living pile this high, and I had to show you. Okay, it's an amazing thing. I also the previous largest number of signers to an amity brief was 3,000. All history. I want to thank SAGE Services and Advocacy for GLBT Elders, which overnight responded to a comment from me with a defined project, Talk Before You Walk. Okay, with a website staffed to make immediate information available to elder committed couples who have questions about marriage. And I'd like to repeat it, full equality of marriage is the law of our land, adding a huge milestone, joining that short list of important and historic steps along the way to total equality. I wish I didn't have to say this now. I could postpone it for a couple of weeks, but I must. It's not total equality, not yet. I'm trying not to make a list here, just a general reminder. I'm also not forgetting that there are non-LGBT people suffering in our country in many ways. It's that I am today celebrating K-DIM today and everything that has happened so far. Armored as we are today, we enter the next phase of our move toward equal equality for all of us. Probably each one of you out there personally knows somewhere between 1 and a dozen or 100 people who have contributed to our journey. I thank you all and ask you to thank all of them for the joy of our lives today and our hope to keep working toward our next landscape. Thank you, Mr. President, for your administration's role in both these cases. And once again, I get to thank the Supreme Court for demonstrating that the Constitution of this country holds, and that we make occasional mistakes, justice ultimately prevails. Thank you, the Equality Forum, for this wonderful award. Lastly, thank everybody here for my life, which is filled with joy and love and community. If I had to survive Thea, what a wonderful way to live.